Hi, in this video I built a simple jewellery box the hard way by including CNC and 3D printing. I also wanted to make some dovetail and pin joints with the CNC machine. There were some challenges in the design and execution. The box will be made from Jarrah and I'll be using Canadian maple for the inlay. I split the boards down the middle and glued them along their edge so they'd be wide enough for the parts I need. Baking paper prevents the separate layers from gluing together. I planed the boards down to 10mm, which is the target thickness of the box sides. Now that the timber's been milled down to size, I can cut the components out of the boards. Labelling as I go makes life a little easier. I made twice the amount of components to allow for mistakes or potentially make a second box. This piece of maple will be an inlay for one of the drawer fronts. I'm not sure what happened here, but I paused the CNC for a minute just to check the work. When I started the machine again, it for some reason just plunged straight down into the table. I've no idea why. I had to remake this piece. What the? One of the more satisfying parts of CNC machining is revealing an inlay and seeing how it's turned out. I think the inlays turned out fairly well. I used the CNC machine to cut the dovetail and pin joints. This was very much an experiment, so I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. The slot in the back corner of the CNC table allows me to feed boards up through the hole and CNC the ends. My first attempt at building the box was a complete disaster. The joints were too tight, and as I was assembling the box, everything started to bind up, and eventually I broke it and had to start again. Just by adding 0.3 of a millimeter offset on all the joints, the assembly went together a lot easier. The pins are 8 millimeters in diameter, so I made the bore hole about 8.6 millimeters in diameter. A small amount of chisel work and sanding brings the sides of the box down flush and smooth. Stretching sandpaper over a piece of MDF helps to prevent the edges from rounding over as you are sanding the sides. I use a flush trim bit to cut away overhang on 3 of the 4 sides. The front of the lid has an overhang to allow for an additional inlay piece to be attached. The 2 scraps of timber are attached temporarily to compensate for the overhang while I cut the lid from the box. This piece of inlay covers the gap at the front between the lid and the box. This is why I left the overhang and cut away the lid before attaching. I made these jigs to cut out slots for the hinges using a template router bit. The concept was good, I just hadn't allowed enough width in the sides for the hinges. I amended this later in the build. The front plate will hold the button mechanism in place. I'm using brass screws to secure it to the box, so there's always access if needed. The easiest solution for attaching the fronts was glue. Adding screws from the back like you would see on most drawer fronts wasn't practical due to the small drawer size. I used scraps of timber to align the fronts with the box, attaching temporarily with tape. I then taped pieces of timber to the fronts to use as guides during the glue up. The button mechanism works a lot like a click pen. A cam is guided along angled grooves alternating between two rest positions. I'm not going to bother you with the details as this video is long enough. The button front is held to the 3D printed mechanism using epoxy resin. Alignment wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. For the finish, I used a gloss wipe-on poly by Feast Watson. To fix the hinges, I beefed up the corners and filled in the old hinge slots with some scraps of timber, and then cut away the excess with a flush trim saw, then sanded back for a smooth finish. The second attempt at the hinges was a success. Beefing up the side walls gave me a lot more material to work with. Gluing the hinges before adding the screws just made things a lot easier to get the alignment correct between the lid and the base. As an afterthought, I quickly made up some dividers for the top of the box using some of the maple. I think it looks nice, but I'm not sure on how much functionality they really add. Each time the button is pressed, the mechanism rotates the initials by 180 degrees. Only when the initials are upside down can the drawer be fully opened, revealing the hidden compartment. Thanks for watching my video. I'll see you again next time.